Commissioner Parker.
Here.
And Judge Clymer.
Here. Let's see. Are you leading us in the prayer? All right. Commissioner Barlow.
Let us pray. Father, we just thank you for the blessings of this day. We thank you for the opportunity that we have to serve this county. Father, we just pray you be with us as we discuss issues and make decisions, that decisions we make will be best for all involved. Father, we just ask a special prayer for all our first responders out on the streets, the fire department volunteers, the sheriff's office, all those who, emergency service workers, all those who work hard to protect this county. We just pray you be with them and give them a safe journey as they perform that duty. Father, we're so thankful for what you do for us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, thank you. And stand to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Then we have the consent agenda, and I understand Commissioner Jones, you wanted to remove AA and BB from the consent agenda, the two board appointments.
I would.
Okay. We'll add them to the regular agenda, as I guess H and I get to them here then just shortly. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, and also on the consent agenda under item O, we just affirmed a hiring of a new deputy, and see the coroner's here. You have your new deputy, Miss Coroner Melton. We'll bring him up and we'll meet him. I guess we've already approved him unless he really messes this up. I think we're all good.
Hello. I would like to introduce you to Adam Larson, who completes our team with the coroner's office. He will be C4. And Adam is a 2006 graduate of Reedland High School, graduate of WKCTC with a degree in fire science. He's an EMT, and he's been with the Paducah Fire Department since 2010. His position there is called relief driver. He has several certifications that will be handy for us: hazmat, swift water, confined space, rope training, and trench rescue, as well as fire investigations and arsons. So those are all categories that we will have a top-notch expert in, and I'm really thrilled to add him onto the team, and just wanted to let you all set eyes on him and see who's along with us.
Yeah. Well, good. Bring good credentials. We are under Coroner Melton. We are, I think, have a strong coroner's office. Very professional, and we're all grateful for that. I know. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good to see you. Let's see here. Then we have some budget transfers.
It is ordered that the necessary cash transfers in the amount of $216,993.41 be made in order to pay county bills and payroll approved July 22nd, 2019.
Motion on that.
So made.
Motion second, and any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That carries. And accounts payable.
It is ordered to approve the vouchers claims register from July 8th, 2019 to July 22nd, 2019 to show county bills in the amount of $264,340.24 were paid.
So made. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That carries. All right, and then discussion items. We got have Tom Hines here from the Civil Air Patrol that wanted to speak to us briefly. You've got some folks here with you, looks like.
Yes, I do. I've got 3 cadets. We've got a dozen cadets in our unit, or the Paducah unit, KY11. And Civil Air Patrol, a lot of people don't really either understand what we do or misunderstand what we do. Civil Air Patrol is an auxiliary part of the Air Force, United States Air Force. We actually have an airplane that we keep at the Barkley Airport. It's financed and funded by the airport or the Air Force fully. However, all of the rest of the things that we do, which I'll get into in just a minute, is we're self-funded. So what we're really about is we've got 3 missions: aerospace education, emergency services, and cadet programs. The cadet program is really our focus. We're actually called the Paducah Cadet Squadron. And cadets are very similar to ROTC programs. They're not required to go into the Army or the Air Force, either one, but they're all set up so if they choose to do, they've got a lot of benefits and a leg up in doing so. They're from all over the community. We've got 1 cadet from Missouri present with us, a couple more that are not here, that they're out at the unit right now. Our meeting actually starts at 6, so we're squeezing this in right before we do that. We meet weekly. We do a lot of training and practicing. There's a lot of military rigor for the kids or the cadets. It's really about developing the cadets into citizens and good, solid people, basically. It gives them a good foundation in science, technology, the STEM type stuff. We also reach out to schools and other groups and interact with them. The EAA, which is like an experimental aircraft group that gets people interested in aviation. Aviation, as you know, is a big business in Kentucky as well as our local area. So the reason we're here is just kind of explain what we're about, what we do, and that we've had support from the county court in the past several years, and we're just looking for some continued support on that. We do a lot of fundraising on our own. We're really a low-budget function. We're all volunteer people. I'll volunteer all my time, of course, and a lot of other adults, their parents do, and there's some other people that just, love contributing to developing the cadets. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just bring them up one by one and let them give you a 1-minute explanation of kind of what they see in the Civil Air Patrol kind of firsthand, rather than me explain it all. Why don't you go ahead and start out with Peyton?
I am Cadet First Lieutenant Peyton Merrick. I have been in the Civil Air Patrol for 2 years now. I'm trying to get a pilot's license out of it. That's what I'm going for. And possibly go into the Air Force Academy. I've been to a lot of regional and I have been to a national activity. It's a great experience, a great program. I enjoy it a lot.
I'm Cadet Second Lieutenant Palace. I've been in Civil Air Patrol for about 2.5 years, somewhere around there, and I just love Civil Air Patrol because it's I see it as stepping stones to my career, my dream career that I'd like to be. I'd like to be a Air Force pilot in the United States Air Force. My dream is always has always been to the Air Force Academy. To go to the Air Force Academy, and I just see Civil Air Patrol as a great experience and way for me to learn, or great stepping stones to get there and get me towards my future. And it's just great because it brings cadets from the national and wing together and just to work as one great big team. So that's my story, sir.
Where were you from?
I'm from Paducah, Kentucky here,
okay,
sir.
Paducah. So we got Marshall County, Missouri, and Paducah.
Yes, sir.
And that's his dad back there with that great big
Tell by the
grin.
smile on his face.
Good evening.
No, it's not. Okay.
My name is Master Sergeant Boatwright. I'm with the 11th out of Paducah. I've been in Civil Air Patrol for 2.5 years now, and I've been to 2 encampments and a search and rescue exercise. Those are trainings we do. And just like Lieutenant Palace, I see Civil Air Patrol as a stepping stone to my career. My dream career would be to fly for a Special Operations Regiment out of Fort Campbell, fly Blackhawks for the Army. And Civil Air Patrol has really given me a jump start and a head up to see what it's more about. Thank you.
Thank you.
So kind of like the cadets pointed out, that we're engaged on a lot of different levels, local level for sure, the wing, which is really the state, Kentucky State, and they also do a lot of national things. In fact, the commanding officer of the cadets is in Oshkosh, Wisconsin right now doing the Blue Beret Academy, where they help marshal all the airplanes up there that they do on their big fly-in up there. And that's pretty much what we do. Currently, we've actually grown. I took over the commandership back in October of last year. I think we had like 3 to 4 cadets steady. Now we're up to about 10 or 12 that are constant. And of course, we have kids that come in and go out. Most of them stick with it. We got a pretty good retention rate, and they're all excited about it. This is really my first time in this much volunteer work. I would say it's a full-time job, but it keeps me very busy as a second job. And it's been a real pleasure working with the cadets, and they're top-notch kids, and they're really motivated. So that's kind of our story. Is there any questions or anything you'd like to ask?
So the past funding has been?
It's been around $3,500 per year. A lot of that money goes towards travel. We try to, every 2 years, the cadets range from 12 to 18 years of age, and then after 18, they become a senior member if they want to. But between 12 and 18, we try to catch it once or twice where we can take a trip up to Washington, D.C., and we do things like lay a wreath in an unknown soldier's tomb, that kind of thing. And it's really about trying to build patriotism and knowledge and appreciation for the founding of the country. So that's really our big expense out of the year. Most of the miscellaneous expenses, like actually we spend quite a bit on of our own money on our uniforms. I pay for my uniform, and I think we actually do the first uniform they get out of the member dues. But after that, their families pretty much do that, and we do some fundraising. So our budget total is around $7,000 a year on average, of which the half's been getting from the county, and we're looking at, of course, growing. We're cadet right now, our cadet unit. We're looking at maybe trying to expand into emergency services, search and rescue, and that kind of thing. But we're just getting started on that, so that's kind of where we are.
What's your cash on hand?
Right now, we've got a little less than $1,000. Except we just did a fundraising. We've got $2,000 that's not accounted for in the system. So that's kind of where we are. $1,000 in the bank and $2,000, you want to call it accounts receivable kind of thing.
Does the city help you in any way? Or?
The city? Not that I'm aware of, no.
How often do you meet?
How often do we meet? We meet once a week, every Monday night.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're
and
there
like
every Monday
this
night.
week, this summer's busy because the school's out, and we call them O-rides, but they're orientation rides. I've been flying Owensboro, some in Bowling Green, some in Muhlenberg County, and Paducah and Saxton. But an orientation ride is basically getting kids in airplanes and starting teaching them the fundamentals. We're not certified flight instructors, but as soon as we get above 1,000 feet above the ground, we turn the controls over to the cadets, and we spend about an hour at a time. We do 5 of those rides, and all that's funded by the Air Force. The Air Force is trying to build interest and enthusiasm in aviation, of course, and so it's a lot of what we spend our time doing. And they also build rank through, during the Monday night meetings. We're constantly working through character development, aerospace education, and they do a lot of history on the Air Force and the Army, or the military services, how they promote. So, they learn how to build rank. I'm not a military background person, but there's a lot of people in our unit that are, and they know all the terminology and everything. I know a captain's over lieutenant, and that's about my the extent of my knowledge, but I'm learning on that.
And of course, we're struggling with who to disperse what funds we can to. We've got $800,000 that we've over the years. We'll say this body, this fiscal court has given to outside agencies, and so we've come to a point where we are really tight on money. We're very short on operating expenses.
Right.
And so that's why, and Commander Miller, or Hines rather, called and wanted to come talk and invited him to do so. What would this, if you were not given the $3,500 that you've been given, what would be the effect?
It really, I mean, just from a practical standpoint, it would drive us to do more fundraising. We're already spending a lot of time fundraising. Personally, we'd rather spend more of the time with the cadets and doing our training and our prep work and that kind of thing. So it's really, I won't call it a distraction, but it's all just an additional burden on the volunteers. Really, kind of what I'm presenting is I want to make sure you guys, that the court understood what we're doing, because it's easy to say, well, I don't know what they do, so why should we fund it? So I want to just explain the return on investment. I know it's an investment from the county. It's like, what does the county or the community get back out of it? And so that's kind of what we're trying to present. It's like it's not just a black hole or no return on investment. So
It sounds like efficient. It sounds like pretty efficient workforce development to me.
oh yeah, it's we work cheap.
So your revenue sources now are, they pay dues, is that right?
Yeah, we pay dues. The dues are $70 a person for each 70.
Per year?
And that goes to the national wing, and then we get a kickback of like, I think $20 or $30 at the most. And then we do fundraising. Like we've got a raffle that we're working through the Elks Lodge now, and that's pretty much, and personal donations.
Then the Air Force pays for some of the...
The Air Force is good about funding everything aviation-wise. So if we get in an airplane and go somewhere for a mission or for a training ride, then they fund that totally. So we're not asking you to fund our airplane rides or anything. This is more it's really incidentals, because it's a pretty good-sized group. We've got actually 14 cadets. I think 12 are active currently. They come every week. We've got 20 seniors, and we've got about a dozen of those that are active, as far as contributing their time and everything. So it's not it's a big thing, but it's not. So I'm trying to paint the picture that it's not going to break us, but it certainly would help us, and I do think you get a good return on your investment. So I think what we're really contributing is we're building good, solid citizens. They're good kids anyway, but we're giving them a path to kind of display their talents and develop their talents.
All right. Anything else? Thanks, sir.
Okay. Thanks for listening to us. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, then we've got 911 put on there just in case there's something to discuss. We have been, Deputy Judge Doolittle and I have been meeting with the city folks, the mayor and others, try to work through how we're going to join up and do our 911. We're making progress, but I guess slow. Is there anything you wanted to add on that? We've got, I think, don't we have a meeting coming up this week? That's what I do is meet, and so
You're a meter.
Yeah, I'm a meter, and so we're going to meet again, and it's going to be we're going to get it done, and it's another aspect of where we're working with the city and working through these things and have a good system. But it just takes. It takes a lot of getting together and working, ironing out the details, but we're making progress toward that.
What's the leaning of the group on the revenue source, or is there one?
Well, we're leaning probably toward a property tax.
Property fee?
Well, I call it a fee or a tax. It would be with the property tax bill.
You can call it a fee, but it feels like tax.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, there's different legal determinations, but it's, I think it'd be a relatively small tax. As we've discussed many times on other issues, our operating budget is very low. We don't have the funds to do a lot of these things, and so we've got to generate some revenue in order to do this. We're looking at 911. We're looking at our most important function of government, local or otherwise, is to protect the people. Comes way before soccer, way before conventions, way before anything else. And so 911, obviously emergency communications is at the very top of that. And so we want to make sure we've got a good system. We're working with the city to coordinate that. And there's going to have to be some revenue come in. And we've talked about utility bills. That'd be rather sporadic. It'd be difficult to get them collected. Probably the easiest, most efficient, and hopefully painless or less painful, however you want to look at it, would be to assess a small tax on property to take care of that. And then it would also address the issue of, say a very wealthy person, if we do it on their water bill, they pay the same fee or tax as a not wealthy person, a poor person, and so there's certain inequities there, I think. But you base it at least on the value of the property, you're getting where it's not painful for anyone, and it's, in my mind, fair, but we're working through all that.
What's any estimate on that amount?
I don't think we have anything you want to...
It's not exactly narrowed down, but the approach that is being taken is current operations plus whatever capital needs that have been accumulating over the years since the city and county have been funding things, and that's namely radios. That's the single most expensive non-personnel related item with emergency dispatch center.
I remember walking away from our joint meeting feeling like we had to have $3 million a year in order to fund what they hoped we would improve. Seemed like they needed $2 million a year to operate, and they needed $10 million worth of stuff, new stuff. There's a better way. Towers. I mean, it was all legitimate stuff.
Right, right, and so the operating number is a little easier to get to because we have a current system of employees that the city is paying to do that right now. What has not been solved or really managed or looked at real hard, because it's just comes from an engineering study, is to what the big number would be for towers and additional radio equipment. I don't think we're zeroed in on that number yet, but the idea is the amount of money that we would charge and collect would be enough both to address operations and address those critical capital needs without either the city or county having to figure out how to get it out of their operational budgets.
Well, I don't know how much discussion you want to be, but I guess I don't want to hold this thought that I have until the final product. But I would have some concern of asking all of the increase to be borne by people who own land, because the premise of 911 is we all use it, and that was the premise of that. I guess the decision that confused us all when they came out with the user fee was everyone benefits from 911, either from the protection it provides or the service it provides. I was hopeful that the city would find a way to include its water utility in the way to share the burden. But
Well, it would on the water bills, and we would like to have it in a unified billing system if possible, to make it simpler and hopefully more equitable, more fair. The county has somewhere in the range of 1,200 to 1,400 people that are on wells, and so they don't pay a water bill. And of course, people that own the land, I've given it a good deal of thought. We've talked about it and batted it around. There's no perfect system, I don't think, but we keep coming back to the idea on a water bill or on something other than a fee or a tax based on the value of the property is that Walmart or Mega Millions Citizen pays the same fee as Widow Jones down here on Fifth Street or whatever, and so that's not fair either. And so I think that's sort of where we're headed on that.
I went to a conference last week and talked to some county officials from Delaware, and they tax the cell phone bill. And the way they do that, they tax it when the bill is paid.
You said it one more time.
They tax cell phones, and they put the tax on where the bill is, what county the bill is paid on. So if some company that's in Paducah has 10 cell phones, they would pay taxes on their cell phone bill when they pay the bill. Then it goes back into the counties to pay. Because I said the problem Kentucky had is they couldn't put a fee on cell phones the way they do on landlines. He said, yeah, you can just tax it where it's paid. If somebody goes to Walmart and buys one of those phones with 30 minutes on it, they would pay the tax at the register. Then the tax would come to the county in which it was purchased. I don't know if Kentucky allows that or not. I don't think they do, but, and it's not a short term. If they have to change the law, the legislature wouldn't do it in the short term. It'd probably take them a session to do that. But they tax the phone bills. And in Delaware, the state collects a tax and they send the revenue back to the counties, to the 911 boards.
Well, as I recall from the joint presentation, our state does tax, and I think we get $400,000 a year sent back to us from state. But I guess the smart folks at that meeting told me at least that we are not allowed as a county to impose a tax.
Correct. Remember with the
I
old,
think that's right.
with the old landline stuff, there was local authority to tax. With the cell phones, the state preempted us. And we don't have a local authority to tax cell phones. So
I
the
know we
state,
don't, but I mean, that's just how they do it in Delaware.
the state collects most of the revenue. When you look at your bill, there is a 911 fee on your cell phone bill, and they just give us a portion of that back based on the address of where the cell phone resides. So it has not been an adequate source to replace what happened with the loss of landline fees.
Anything else on that? Nope. All right, then we've got on here CDB, the interlocal agreement that we've been working on. Deputy Doolittle and I have been working with the mayor and some of their staff. Richard Abraham's been a part of this, working on that and trying to get the documents. Our county attorney, Sam, has been working on it quite a bit. You've done quite a bit of work on it too. We can't forget where all this kind of came up, your brainchild. And so it's really remarkable that you found that and that we didn't find it before, or the prior bodies or whatever, but it's going to pay off big for us and the whole community. But we have to get the language right. We're trying to move quickly but smartly and not get too ahead of ourselves. We just got today a second draft. It includes the comments of the bond attorney, protective kind of language, cover yourself language about the bonds that have associated with this, and I didn't see anything in there that looked to be of any real concern. We've got other things that we're going to try to work through, but so y'all just got that just a little bit ago. It's kind of hot off the press.
Yeah, I did notice one thing, that this agreement has two termination provisions, Article 8 and 11. concerned me a little bit that Article 11 says that this can only be terminated by an agreement of a joint action of the city and the county and the corporation and the bureau and the sports commission. And that, I'm not sure whether it almost feels like, well, it says we're entering an agreement we can't get out of unless 4 other agencies say we can get out of it, and they might not ever all 4 say that we can get out of it. It feels like we're kind of giving up the throne a little bit on the decision of whether to be in an agreement or not. Would you have any concern, Sam, about us entering an agreement that we can't get out of?
I haven't seen the most recent copy. I didn't get that, but I think the same language was in the second amended draft. And I had a question mark out beside that for that reason, because most all contracts that I've ever drafted or reviewed had a termination clause where a no-fault termination is possible. Of course, those are in like a commercial type of arrangement. So I really didn't have the opportunity to dig into that. But I saw there's the termination upon completion of the goals of the various bureaus or various commissions, the 2 commissions. I saw that, and then I think it's going to take a little bit more analysis, maybe some more questions to be asked, whether or not there could be an additional method to get out of the contract beyond a unanimous decision.
I think I would be hesitant, even if we could, I would be hesitant to enter into any agreement that we would basically have to get the city's consent to end. There may be some, some sort of preconditions we could put in there for it, but that just seemed eternal to me, or more eternal than I wanted it to be.
Well, it may be that's, of course, that I think was, that's language that was added by the bond attorney, and so then he is trying to make sure that the bondholders, investors, don't get nervous and say, hey, we don't like the fact that one of the 4 entities here can pull out on certain notice, and then this thing all implodes.
Yeah, and that made sense to me, that provision where we couldn't get out or couldn't terminate until that bond is paid for. That makes sense to me. But then the next sentence seems to say that, well, I guess Article 11, the first sentence of Article 11 is what I'm concerned about.
Well, we'll make a note of that and see what we can do. It's getting closer to a final draft, but this is draft 2. There may be a draft 7 or 8. I don't know. Maybe
in the meeting, they seem to want our discussion and thoughts on 3.4, and I don't know if that's something that we can talk about in executive session, or whether we should or shouldn't discuss it. I got the impression that when we go back and meet again, they're going to want what the fiscal court thinks with regard to what 3.4 should say.
you're talking about the bond attorney or the?
No, not the bond attorney, at the actual city one.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's, of course, the only thing in here that's got question marks in it, and so that's one of the big things that we don't know where this thing, where the fields are going to be, where any building's going to be. I don't know the cost of it, to buy it, operate it, anything. So there's lots of question marks.
What's the reasoning on why the priorities need to be outlined in this agreement?
I think that's a great question. And in fact, I'm not sure that if we're doing it the way the statutory framework says, I think the analysis first has to go to the Sports Commission and us, the fiscal court. We would be the determining factor as to how to spend that money. The statute says that the governing body, which we would be the governing body, can spend it with the advice and consent of the Sports Commission. I guess I just don't know what level of discussion we want to give it. I'm certainly not wanting to
Well, I don't think we want
hold
to
anyone
talk.
hostage.
Yeah, I don't think we want to talk about locations in general or what we're looking at for locations, but as far as, you know, the bones of it, soccer fields, baseball, softball, you know, that sort of thing. But the reason I think that we're wanting to put in here, this whole document is a document that's going to give us some authority and some leverage. We all had some heartburn about thinking that we're going to create a tourism commission, two of them, our tourism commission. Then we're going to say, build us, operate us what we want for soccer, baseball, whatever. And that we wanted to maintain some level of control and authority to say, in case, and I don't know what a good example would be, and hopefully everybody would be on board and we see the mission, what it is, and we'll get there and all hand in hand in an agreement. But it's possible that the Sports Commission says, well, we don't think soccer is so important. We really like lacrosse. Yeah. And so...
Pickleball.
Yeah.
That was in the paper.
Yeah, you need to be careful of that. There's a lot of people, I wouldn't be putting down pickleball.
Well, I'm not. In fact, I'm kind of interested in it. It looked like it might fit me. But pickleball would have to generate tourism dollars for it to qualify. Yeah. And maybe it will one day. Yeah. But I'm not sure it's there yet.
But I mean, in answer to your question, Commissioner, I think that's why I think that's in there, is for the two government entities, the city and the county, to have some standing, some position to say, look, our interlocal agreement says here's really what we think's important, and maintain some position that way.
Well, I did go back and propose some language, and I guess I just couldn't get a read from that group that we met with whether they wanted us to come back with language that we felt this body would approve.
How do we know we're just building one quadplex of each thing and 6 soccer fields? What if we figure out in the bonding we've got enough money to build 2 quadplexes and eight soccer fields? I mean, are we limited to whatever this thing's going to say, or you know?
Well, these really are kind of rough space holders, I think. They're not, I mean, our final agreement could end up completely different from that. It's just as our thinking progresses and try to get closer to a finished product, we're just putting these items in here thinking those fit, but I mean, they may not.
Well, so I'm suggesting some language, and I guess I'll take language to that meeting that suggests more generally that we're anticipating that the Sports Commission would look at the tourism nature and what money could be generated, and I've identified 4 sports, volleyball, soccer, softball, and baseball. Mm-hmm. But I'm not designating which one goes first, or if we, because the reality is we probably can't do them all at one time.
I think that was in our RQF that they would, whoever we hire for that will tell us which ones are the most popular and which ones will create the most revenue from the start.
I think you're right. I think we have to have more, the benefit of more research as to which market we could actually generate, because part of the purpose of this money is to put heads in beds. And
maybe pickleball, right?
Maybe pickleball, but
I just wonder that section 3.4 that we just say the parties agree that the Sports Commission will pursue the construction, operation, and maintenance of new and/or enhanced tournament-worthy sports facilities.
Yeah,
because again, we may want to. It has 6 soccer fields. We may want to build 12. And it says, as Commissioner Parker mentioned, it says a quad plex for softball and baseball, but it may be that, you know, it's more economical to do more at the same time rather than come back and do more later.
I think we have to keep whatever we put into this agreement general, because I don't think we can make a policy decision as to what we're going to build in a contract, particularly a contract we can't get out of.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, and I tend to agree that I don't know that we need numbers of how many fields or that sort of thing, because we don't know how much money we're going to have. We don't know what we're going to spend it on. It's just that as a starting spot, and I suspect we might be pulling that number 6 out of there and just, you know, leaving that open.
Yeah, but I think it's you know, what we don't want, I guess, is to suddenly get into this and find out that somebody wants, I mean, you know, suddenly this money's going to go to create a trail system as opposed to sports tourism.
Well, the one tool we do have is we appoint the members of the Tourism Commission. So I think we can unappoint them.
Yeah, I look back at what we voted on. I don't think we voted on May 13th, but the motion we did vote authorized you to go ahead and start setting up the Sports Tourism Commission in advance of September 1, if that's a good idea. And I think it probably is.
Yeah.
I have one other question too in another section, if I could. And I don't remember the explanation of why the city gets all of the assets.
Which paragraph is that, Bill?
That's on,
Oh, you know, I told them you would ask that. In fact, I specifically said Commissioner Bartleman will ask that question.
What are we talking about?
it's
the part,
section 1-2, I think.
yeah, it's the part where basically so presently it's a joint commission, so we own half of the real estate of the CVB. And one of the things, yeah, I suggested in the meeting, and I got the impression they were going to try and come up with a number as to what that value is. And I don't.
If I remember looking at their financial figures, they had a considerable amount, a pretty good cash balance, in addition to the debt on the building.
I asked that, and the answer was 11,000.
11,000?
11,000.
That's not what their tax form show. I don't remember what it was now, but I looked at their.
Well, and I did in our request, open records request, I did get their, they presented us with a financial statement from May 30th and I think June 30th. I don't remember there being a number inconsistent with that, but I think you're right. We need to go back and look at that. One of the reasons that I suggested we would be, well, I guess it just depends on the number of assets, the value of assets, whether it would be worth dividing.
I don't remember the number, but I looked at their 990 tax form.
What I did like, Bill, is that they were going to take all of the employees and all the liabilities associated with the employees, right. And that seemed, and they were going to take any. You know, I don't know the value of the building. They were going to get back to me a number. I just don't know. I don't feel like they're sitting on $1 million building, an unencumbered $1 million building. I feel like they're probably sitting on a $300,000 building encumbered by a $240,000 mortgage.
I'm not sure. I don't remember what those numbers were.
But I think it's certainly this contract needs to reflect we've asked those questions and done that due diligence and made an informed decision as to whether we want to pursue those assets or if we feel good about just having a good, easy parting and we don't want the assets.
Well, we can look more into that, but if they're taking the responsibility of maintaining the employees, paying that, and $11,000, I would be hesitant to get down in the weeds too far and say, hey, we won't have that money. It's there. It's going to be their part to deal with, their commission, their their CVB. If they were sitting on $1 million, we probably need to talk a little more.
Yeah.
Anything else on the CVB? No?
I'd like to see us try to have a first reading at our next meeting, if at all possible,
Of the ordinance.
of the ordinance, so we can start collecting tax.
Do we need a
September
discussion
1st.
before that meeting then on what's in there, rather than just wait till the last?
Well, the ordinance actually kind of stands, I think, potentially separate from the agreement. We could actually do the ordinance, then the agreement. I don't know, Sam, how close was I on the ordinance?
Yeah, the ordinance looked good. Yeah, there was.
Say that part one more time.
Don't give him a big head, Sam.
I thought it was really good. You know, it addressed some of the issues and the changing nature of the I guess the industry. Made for some provisions for clarifying the duties of the people affected by it. And I thought it looked really good. Stylistically.
Up here, Sam, so we can.
Interlocal agreement would be separate from the ordinance.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, I think ideally, from a public perception, if we can package it all together, I think that's great. And
I don't think you're gonna be able to do that. I think this interlocal agreement's gonna take a lot longer than the first reading of an ordinance and the second reading. I don't think you're gonna have this done in a month and by appointing a commission and all that. I don't think it's gonna happen.
it is $92,000 a month.
A little over 100, yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
in the ordinance, I mean, that just kind of is what it is, so to speak, because the statute says exactly what the ordinance can do, how the taxes can be levied, what the percentages can be used for, so that's just pretty well going by the KRS sections that guide what these commissions or bureaus would do. So that's, I think, as you just said, the ordinance itself is going to be a whole lot easier to come together than the actual interlocal agreement.
So you think we can work towards 2 weeks having the first reading?
I think we could get it put together.
Okay.
It's just, I haven't thought a whole lot about the logistics of passing an ordinance that's going to begin to levy a tax and not yet having the managing authority set up to manage the tax proceeds. And so that's something we'll need to talk about just a little bit more, because before you can have the commission, I would think that you would need to have the funding mechanism and the funds that the commission would be monitoring and utilizing. I would think it'd be nice to have them right there at the same time coming to life. But
Yeah, there was one, we added some language to it kind of at the last minute for the Airbnb. And I'd read your memo on the concerns of is it the agreement with Airbnb? Somebody proposed an agreement. Airbnb actually proposed an agreement on how they were going to help us start collecting from their host.
right.
And I guess I wanted to make sure that whatever we put in the ordinance you were comfortable with.
Yeah.
With regard to how we were going to enforce the Airbnb tax.
Well, you know, there's that Supreme Court case that states that as it relates to Airbnb or these online travel booking agencies, they are not obligated to pay a transient room tax themselves. Rather, it passes the onus on to the actual host. And so for that reason, Airbnb has submitted this proposed voluntary agreement for payment on the terms that it's proposed. And so we just had a few items to discuss with regard to that, because they're in a position to where they are not legally obligated to do what they're saying that they're willing to do. And so it's very, very pro them. So I liked where you had the suggestion that the transient room tax would be levied upon the individual hosts. I guess unless there's a binding contract submitted by the internet, I guess, agent, facilitator, whatever it would be,
right,
to undertake the payment. I like that. I mean, definitely if you're operating a transient room type establishment, you need to pay the transient room tax.
But it seemed like that was the best avenue to get money we're not getting
Right.
now.
Right.
That's all I had. I mean, I definitely think whatever the Airbnbs, we need to make sure we level the playing field for the hospitality group, the guys that out here collecting tax and paying it, and the rest of them aren't, so.
All right, so we feel good about our ordinance, but we are still struggling on the interlocal.
Well, I think this is gonna take a while. I mean, I'm like Judge Clymer, I mean, this is a work in progress. It's probably a month or so down the road. But there's no reason why we can't go ahead and have our ordinance and have a second reading at the end of August and start collecting first.
Was there a time limit? Are we restricted to, we do a first reading of the ordinance? Must the second one be within a certain amount of time to the first, or can it?
There's not a time frame limitation. It's just always been the 2 weeks because that's our times between our meetings. There has to be 2 readings. Has to be adequate time for there to be a publication and 2 readings.
Yeah. I think we've got a joint meeting at the end of August with the city. That'd be a nice time for a second reading with them.
So if we do our first reading at the next meeting?
Then the second one would come up right before the 1st September with the city, and I think they're planning on a first reading the day after our next meeting, so.
Well, it would be nice to do the second reading jointly with the city, and because we are working closely with them, and it's mutually beneficial, and it's a work in progress by both governments. But and of course there was talk, and we had thought perhaps we'd even have the first reading tonight, and then we began the talk of well, the bond council was having some issues with that. We don't want to do anything that would make these investors feel uneasy and say, hey, wait a minute, we got money tied up in this. Slow down a little bit. We want, and so we backed off of that to do it tonight, and it may well be in 2 weeks we can have the first, and then what'd you say, August 30 is the. So that'd be 3.
20, it's first Monday and Tuesday, I think it's 26th or 27th. We're going to try to have a joint meeting, of August with the city.
Yeah.
What date is that? August when?
26th and 27th, Monday and Tuesday. I think we're gone that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to the governor's.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, we've got a meeting of ours on the 26th. Do you think we're going to?
I think we're planning on trying to do a joint, yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I mean, it doesn't have to be, I mean, we can do a special call meeting if we want to. It's important enough that we don't have to just put it in 2-week blocks. If we decide we're ready, everything looks like it's good, the time's right, we do a special meeting, come in here. I think wouldn't it be nice to have a meeting that lasts like 15 minutes? And we're out the door?
I'd like to see a shoot for that.
So we're going to do our first reading August 12th.
Yeah.
That's our next scheduled meeting.
As long as Sam's comfortable with it, I'm good. That's what I like.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, anything else? Let's see, then, where are we here?
Oh, hold on.
What?
Mr. Allen, you want?
Oh, yes.
My name's Kerry Allen, General Manager of the Holiday Inn Express here in town. And while I appreciate the approach of taxing the Airbnb, which has been a problem here in Paducah, but I don't think it's quite fair that the hotels solely take on the burden of financing this new sportsplex. In jumping the tax, another 4%, taking it from 6% to 10%, that's a jump, guys. You're going to be forcing folks to make a decision about what town they actually want to stay at. Paducah's not the only game in town. You got Metropolis right across the river that's going to have substantially less tax. You're going to have folks staying out in Calvert City. You're going to have folks probably go to Mayfield for whatever hotel is there, go down to Murray. So all this revenue that you're thinking about is going to be a cash windfall. You might want to think about it a little bit more. Okay. Now then, the one thing that, hotels do have a lot of folks stay here. And not just for sports. Yes, it is a market. I remember talking with Van Newberry years ago about, just shortly after they built the high school, about all of our underutilized, currently owned by the county facilities, all being maintained by the county currently, but really underutilized. Okay. Now we want to build something totally new. Anyways, it could work. I'm not saying it's not going to, it could work. But I think there's another missed opportunity you're not really looking at. We bring in the guests will usually stay a few days, but aren't they not eating? No, they are eating. Okay? At the Express, we give breakfast away. Okay. But they're going to get lunch somewhere. They're going to get dinner somewhere. So what's wrong with a small tax on the restaurants?
I couldn't agree with you more. And I know that's not popular to say, but the reality is we can't. There is a particular statute, it's in KRS 91A, that says only certain cities, I call them special cities, get to charge the hotel tax. And that's what Elizabethtown has charged. Restaurant tax. The restaurant tax. I think they charge about a 2% restaurant tax. The way they, I guess, decide which cities get to be special is you had to be a 4th or 5th class city to be special, and you had to be 4th or 5th class in 2010. Later, they did away with the classes, but that's still the framework. I promise you, I've talked to every legislator from this area, and I think we all have. That legislation is unconstitutional. I'm convinced that it is, because our Constitution, our state Constitution, says that we can't make a special class of men or women. And I think when we empower certain cities to employ a restaurant tax, we are making them special. And if you don't believe that, all you got to do is go to Elizabethtown and look at the number of kids that are playing on the quality of sports fields they are. It is making a special city. How we convince Frankfurt to undo that unconstitutional legislation, I'm not sure yet. Give me another 6 months, and I'll come back with a better answer. But I agree with you that it's unfair to put it all on the hotel industry. And hopefully, at some point, there will be some way to apply a restaurant tax to a corridor, an interstate corridor, because that's really what we want. We don't really want to tax. Well, the reality is if we had our preferences, if we could tax folks that are driving through, staying at the restaurants, that's what we want to do. We don't want to tax those downtown, and we're trying to figure out a way to do that. This body is not authorized to come up with that plan, but I think Commissioner Bartleman has arranged to have us talk with somebody a lobbyist for KCO, and I think or at least I hope to express those concerns to her. So, hope that makes you feel somewhat better.
Well, in a way, yeah. But, when we're going to be jumping to a tax level that's above Nashville.
Is it above Nashville?
It will be.
What's Nashville?
Let's see, where was it at? Yeah, it's around 14-something%. Let's see. Nashville, 14.25, plus they have a $2 bed tax. So we're already at 13.42, so you're going to tack on another 4% to that. So we're already over, would be 17%. Next closest city is Clarksville, where the military base is. And, nobody else around us will even be close to that. Hoptown, they're 13.42 like we are currently. Eddyville's 10.25. Metropolis is 11.25. Carbondale's at 14.
One of the things that is happening is undergoing part of this tax. So what we're I guess setting aside is a 3% sports tourism tax that you'll get the benefit of, hopefully, and I mean that sincerely. And I keep saying, I hope you keep hearing those words that we got to follow this religiously. 3 members of the hotel industry ended up on the sports commission, and they get to help tell us where this money is spent, because the goal is to put more heads in your beds so that you make more money. That's statutory. If you look at the source of the rest of those taxes, you have the benefit of being a hotel in a city with a convention center, which not all of those cities have a convention center. And so part of that tax is to fund the convention center. Mm-hmm. That is also hopefully putting heads in your beds.
That's if any facility I feel is being underutilized, it is our convention center. But that's due to the size of the facilities that are currently available downtown. The Executive Inn, when it was there, you had 400 plus rooms, easy peasy. You could actually use the facility because tour operators could actually book everything there. Mm-hmm. Current arrangement, no, that's not there.
And which hotel are you? Are you the one next to the convention center?
I'm out by the interstate.
Oh, okay. I'm okay. Interstate. Okay.
Yeah. But tour operators don't want to drive from where a majority of the hotels are at, out by the interstate, to downtown. So that's why there's a lot of difficulty being able to book is downtown. And even then, when you have, that's 123 rooms. If you're a smart operator, you're not going to book more than 50% of your rooms in a particular event. So you need, more rooms down there. When will that happen? Don't know. Not sure if you guys have noticed the market overall, but there's been a decline in overall demand for rooms, heads on beds. We've seen a bump, or my hotel has anyways, seen a bump here recently, but that doesn't offset.
Is that just the summer season
over the past year?
Do you have any idea what the bump, what has caused the increase?
We've had a lot more tourism along the road on the interstate. There have been a few things here locally that have helped, bring demand to us. But
is there any...
It's the one thing that's going to be really hard to convince a lot of our guests that do travel interstate, because we get an earful of it right now with the current tax level, is when they hear that there's going to be another 4% tacked on to their room bill, they're going to decide to drive a little bit further or drive a little bit less and stay at another city. And just
what's the price? What's the average price of your room?
Let's anywhere from $129 to $179 a night. It is one of the highest quality facilities in town, hence we do charge a higher rate. We don't eye gouge a lot of folks, but we charge a reasonable rate for what folks are getting.
When I met with the hospitality folks, the committee, do you go to those committee meetings?
I'm not on the committee. I'm part of the association.
They indicated that they needed, if they needed help, they need help in the wintertime. Your summer occupancy is pretty solid. Mm-hmm. Is that your experience?
I've been in the industry for over 25 years, and wintertime is the slowest time of any time of the year. January, February, March timeframe.
do you notice any sports tourism dollars in your hotel business already? I mean, is there any events that you see that you're already feeling a sports tourism effect from?
From basketball. Not much from baseball, not football really. Primarily basketball.
Basketball that, I guess I'm trying to figure out what tournament where.
Well,
Or is it
let's
just
see,
people
we've
coming
got
in?
oh golly, what's it called out there?
Mustang Madness?
Yeah, Mustang Madness, and then, the one from Marshall County when they had
Hoop
folks come
Fest.
in. But those are primarily it. There are a few things from here and there, but again, think about the average price range our facility is at. We don't get a whole lot of folks that stay at our facility for sports related. They are going to be a lot more price sensitive and stay at other facilities. But at my facility, we don't get a whole lot of tour operators. So, just to be upfront.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank
Thanks,
you. But
Gary.
please consider, that's going to be a big jump.
All right, we're ready to move on to, let's see, we have a whole business, anything, let's see, we had some, I don't know, we have any old business we need to discuss? I can't think of what it was.
I don't think we did.
All right, then we've got some court orders that were not on the consent agenda. Madam Clerk?
It is ordered that the judge executive is authorized to enter into a service agreement with Lone Oak Youth Baseball Softball Association to pay the amount of $10,000 to Lone Oak Youth Baseball Softball Association, same being the county park appropriation for fiscal year 2019-20.
I'll make a motion, I want to discuss this.
I'll second it for discussions.
All right.
Is this just a contract, we're not doing anything, or?
On my original tour, we got into a situation with the state auditor where said you just couldn't give money to people. Just can't do that. You can give money to a board if there was the issue of connection and control. So if they were organized under a statute or an ordinance and they were sufficiently governmental, you could provide funds for them. Or if you controlled the board, i.e. you appointed the board members, you could give money to them. But if you didn't do those two things, then you ought to purchase something from them. So we had devised and used for many years these little service agreements. So in exchange for the support you're offering them, they agreed to do whatever is the sort of unstated purpose we were giving them money for. So in this case, it's not too much. Run your fields and do it for youth baseball or youth softball, depending on the field situation. And so I propose we do that for these little boards for which we have neither connection or control to. So that's where that idea came from. Evidently, for a number of years, the county had not been doing this. It had been simply handing a check off. And I don't think there was anything wrong or inappropriate going on with that. The other thing it does is it sort of reminds everyone that they're on annual appropriations. So there's nothing permanent in the funding stream for anyone. So it's my suggestion you reinstitute this just for those boards and agencies that we give money to for which you do not have connection or control over.
So all we're doing is doing a contract, we're not doing an amount tonight, right?
You are doing an amount, and the amount tonight would be $10,000.
It is going to be $10,000?
That is what is proposed
That's
in the
what was in the
contract.
budget.
Right, correct.
They made the cut.
Well, that's entirely up to you.
I mean, but they are they were in the budget we've already passed and submitted to the Department of Local Government.
We submitted a budget that had a whole number in it. It's not that granular that it identifies the specific ones. However, that was my management recommendation to you is you fund all of the youth sports things at their current level. So that would be Lone Oak, Reedland, Heath, and the McCracken County youth soccer program.
So you're envisioning there's going to be more contracts coming to us?
Yes, they trickle across the year.
I guess, I mean, I want to give Lone Oak youth sports their money, but we've yet to sit down and discuss this. Has it come back from DOG yet, or?
Oh yeah, our budget is approved, and they don't care how much you decide to give any one outside agency. And I think is this the first youth one we've done, or we've already done another youth one?
This is the first.
This is the first one. Okay.
I'd like to see us kind of do them all together and look at it together, I guess what I'm saying.
That was my memory, was that we were going to kind of submit the budget to the Department of Local Government and get that approved, and we were going to do a second huddle and see what we were going to do with nonprofits. With what I think we were hoping that our June expenses would be less and our June revenue might be more.
I gave you a memo with regard to that.
And yeah, that didn't pan out. I guess, are we committed, if we vote on this contract, we're committed to that amount?
Well, yes, we would pay them that amount.
In the past few years, we've required these nonprofits to submit a formal request for the funds and outline how the funds will be spent. I don't see anything in this agreement that would require that. We would just give them the money.
They did that at budget time.
Okay, did we receive something from
Yeah.
them in writing? Another thing I'm always concerned about is accountability.
Right.
I mean, too often we ask for accountability after something goes awry. And I know there's accountability. We go look at the books anytime we want. But is there any other accountability that they require? I don't know that we need to require them to do an audit, because that can be expensive and not worth it. But
Right. So with the real little ones like this that are on small budgets and have small amounts, they don't have staff. You know, it's just parent volunteers that do this on the side. So we try to make these as simple and uncomplicated as possible. And more for anything, it's sort of, we don't want that audit comment that you just gave someone money without getting anything in return. Not that I don't think that hasn't happened in the past, but it more or less covers us. So that's sort of one issue. The other issue is we've had our annual request from Lone Oak for their funding, whether or not you want to do one of three things: approve it at the level that it's been at for many years, or decide to decide later and put them all together and decide how you want to put this out. My recollection, Commissioner, was we were going to decide if we were going to add money into it, and I've made that suggestion to how you might do that.
I'm going to have to go back and read your memo. I'm sorry, but I think
cut to page 10.
But I guess that's what I remembered is we kind of punted on some nonprofits.
Yes.
Hoping that we would have better news for them a little later in the process. And I guess I want to make sure that we're doing what we said we would do, is go back and look at if we've got to cut somebody. I guess I want to share the pain equally among all of them.
You can do that. That if you want to do that, then I would suggest we hold off on this one until if you want to reshuffle all of those.
What's that?
I think that's, I mean, either that or we're going to have to give them all 10 grand, and I'm not sure we can do that. I mean, it's just like these guys out here, they're $3,500. They're a small one, but I think we look at everybody equally.
All right, well, then I move we table this until we can figure out what we want to do with all nonprofits.
I second.
Second. Any more discussion? Motion's to table this service agreement to the level of $20,000 or $10,000 to Lone Oak Youth, and have a
Guess we want to
consider all the past recipients at one meeting, maybe.
Well, yeah, I think that's what, as I recall, is we were kind of in a time crunch. We needed to pass the budget that night as it was in order to meet the Department of Local Government deadlines.
We had to pass a budget, and it had to be done by July 1, and we've done that. What's at debate is how much money do you want to fund outside agencies, and we've put a number in the budget, and it's $516,000, and that's for all of your obligations you want to make for 1 year. If you want to decide to adjust that number, not just for the outside agencies, but for everything else that we left out of the budget, which was about $3 million worth of various things that were requested by the Sheriff's Department, the Road Department, and everyone else, and another what amounted to about $300,000 in requests from agencies. So it really breaks down to two things. One, do you want to add more money into the budget? And then secondly, what is that number and how do you want to divide it?
We've got $516,000. We know we want nonprofits. We kind of said, all right, this is what we think, but then we left some people out. I guess I'm wanting to table this and have kind of a global discussion about that $516,000. And I guess before I start voting on 10,000 here, 10,000 there, I want to have that.
Yes. So there was a way I got to 516 that involved fully funding the youth sports thing, since there were 4 of them that have been historically funded at the county.
I kind of think, don't we have that memo in our packet?
It's in there, but I don't know if there's sufficient detail in it for the outside agencies. That table is not in the memo.
Do you know, are these nonprofits under IRS, or do they do you have any idea? I mean, do they file 990 reports?
No idea.
Any idea?
No idea.
I would think not. I mean, I think this is probably their only fund.
On our list, some of the bigger ones obviously do, but I don't know on these little youth sports associations that are run out of a checking account.
What information have we gotten from them in their request? Did it include their entire budget, or just tell us they're going to use the 10,000?
I don't have that handy. We haven't been, relative to the number of kids and services they have. It's been sort of a safe assumption that they spend at least $10,000 on electricity and equipment and things they buy to run their sports leagues.
Well, I applaud the effort to put all of this stuff in contracts, and we're going to talk, I guess our next item will be a contract that I even have more interest in. And I think that's the right thing for us to be doing, to do these contracts. But
I remember one time we had another discussion on some of these. For example, Lone Oak pays their own utility bill. I think at the Reedland Fields,
That's correct.
That's the utility bill?
Reedland
And we had some discussion at one time whether we ought to just deduct the utility bill from the 10,000. I don't know if it was this fiscal court.
I don't think it was this. It wasn't this fiscal court.
It was the last fiscal court. Then we had discussion of whether or not it was the equality of giving them $10,000 and you pay the utility bill, and giving somebody else $10,000 and we pay the bill. Can you get some figures together when we come back with all this and tell us how much we spend on utility bills at the different fields and tennis association, all those things?
Sure will.
All right, so the motion is to table this. Any more discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, no. That carries that. Table that. I'll work on maybe getting, there's a bunch, I don't know, what is there, Steve, like 20 some odd different groups in that neighborhood, 20, 25, and some of them are rather small asks and some not so small, but anyway, we'll figure out something to maybe get some information from them and we can decide if we want to do it on percentage wise or what we want to do. I think maybe, oh, here we go. All right, Madam Clerk.
Okay. It is ordered that the judge executive is authorized to enter into a service agreement with Greater Paducah Economic Development to pay the amount of $250,000 to GPED, with $62,500 being the first quarter budget allocation for fiscal year 2019-2020.
Again, I'm gonna make that motion for discussion.
I'll second.
All right, discussion.
We got anybody here from GPED?
Well, I'm on the board, but.
Well, you wanna speak for them and ask for the $250,000?
I will. That would be unfair. They were not asked to be here. All we have received is their request for their funding of their first quarter. Again, the fiscal court used to do this and hasn't been doing it for a number of years. This was no request from GPED to say let's get that start going. That was my management initiative to do that. So just tell me what you want to do with this agreement or what you think we should get in exchange, and we can make that happen.
I think it's a great idea. If there's any one entity we need a contract with, it's GPD, not because they don't, just because we need, as what we've learned is we need to identify what it is we want from them. And here's what I would suggest is, one, that we clarify that we as a group and commissioners would get economic development consulting from them. I personally would prefer that each time we approve a $62,000 check to them, that we invite them and that they be expected to come and at least give a short public presentation to give the public kind of some information as to the state of the public's economy and how things are looking or not looking, and what's worked and what hadn't worked. Give me time, I'll come up with some more things. But I think I sent you an email of some suggestions.
So we want to table this till we get someone in here from GPED to give us an update, or?
Do you want to start that process now? No, they have just hired someone I don't believe has started yet. Mr. Anderson has been engaged in this, I think, since November. I'm sure he would be happy to come back again. I think he's been here once since the beginning of the year.
I would have personally some concern about, we've been for some time now giving at least $250 to GPED, and now they've got a new CEO. I think even if it were not a matter of, it's not that we're not going to give the money, but I think it's that we're going to give it, but we want to hear something from them. I think not having asked them or conditioned tonight's payment to them, and the fact that they have a new CEO that they've been working on getting for some time, I think the optic would be rather bad for the county, who is, I guess, the largest contributor to GPED. I think the city maybe gives just a little less.
We're even now after this coming year.
Okay, so the city and county are the biggest contributors, each given a $250,000. I would not like the idea of saying we're not going to give this 62.5 with them just hiring a new CEO.
Oh.
And we had Glenn Anderson here, what was it, what,
Couple
last
months
meeting?
ago.
Yeah, maybe a month ago or so.
Yes.
Brought us up to speed. I think they're open with us. The things that perhaps there's some fault on me for not. I mean, I'm on the board, and you're the fiscal court. I'm the CEO of this, but I can play a part in that as well, of keeping you informed on the things that are going on, that sort of thing. But not that I don't have any problem with inviting them and saying, here's what we would like to know, be kept up to speed. But I think it could be viewed as from those who tend to view things negatively anyway, and there's people out there do that.
We don't want to be negative, so let's give them the money. How about that?
That's where I'm headed.
Could we approve the allocation of the funds, but delay the approval of the agreement? Or do you wait?
We could, because I think we've been, Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't been running 250 through the commission. We've been running an order through for 6250 every quarter.
Yeah.
Is that your memory, Julie?
Yeah.
62.5.
62.5 a
Yeah.
quarter. So we're doing 4 of these a year. So yes, we could do a 3-quarter year agreement. Maybe that would be better now that they have a new CEO.
Well, I don't have any problem paying the money. Glenn Anderson has been very, very helpful, and I think he's done a great job communicating with all of us. But I just want to set that expectation clearly that, I guess I want to make sure that I think the 4 of us are elected to provide oversight, and every now and then that means we need to pick up the phone and have our own conversations with the executive director of GPED, and I want to make sure that that's in the list of things that we get for this $62,500. If somebody asks us a question, somebody has an idea, that we've got a way to pass that along, ask them about this property, that property. And one of the things I've repetitively heard in the campaign is that there needed to be more transparency with GPED, and I think the opportunity, we've got the opportunity to provide transparency to the public, and I think the expectation that, maybe not this meeting, I agree, but that becomes the expectation of, well, the good news is we're going to get $62,500 today from the fiscal court. I guess the bad news is we've got to show up and tell some people, here's what's gone right, here's what's gone wrong. And maybe that's not bad news. Maybe I just think that ought to be the expectation.
I don't think that'll be a surprise to Glenn or anyone.
Wow.
I agree with Commissioner Jones. We need more transparency and to make sure we have it in writing what the communication is going to be and the accountability is going to be. I mean, right now that's on everybody's mind. Everybody's cooperating, but I don't want things to slip away, and a year from now, that it get back to the way it was in the past. And I expressed some concerns in email, I think, that you got today. I don't know whether they're reasonable or not reasonable, but I think they're things that we need to consider to make sure that if there's personnel actions that take place, we need to know about that, rather than hear the rumor mill, then be told we can't be informed of those. If they have any investigations underway, if there's lawsuits filed, we just need to know about those. I know most of that is confidential, but we need to know about them confidentially since we're providing that amount of money. So if we could take a look at those and see, and if they're not reasonable, I can be swayed that we don't need those things in there. But just accountability is very important.
Yeah,
and we can have accountability without micromanaging. I don't want them to think we're trying to micromanage, but I don't think accountability is micromanaging their organization.
I think the most frustrating thing that I experienced from people when we were campaigning was it wasn't so much, the rumors of so-and-so looked at us, but then they didn't pick us. Well, why didn't they pick us? And there always seemed to be a missing link in that information, and I realize it's not fun to talk about why you didn't get picked, but I think that's what we owe the public. So I guess I would move to modify Court Order B to authorize the payment of $62,500, but I guess ask that we not authorize the judge executive to enter into the contract until we can spell out the other things that we want in the contract.
Can we just, we don't want to table it. If we table this motion, can we come back and approve another motion to authorize the payment of $62,500?
I think I have to agree with Judge Clymer. Let's do the money and get the agreement drawn up the way we want it.
So I don't know that I was very articulate, but
So are we doing like a motion to amend?
yeah, we're doing a motion to amend that says we can pay the money, but we're not going to sign the contract yet because we want to rewrite the contract.
Are you going to withdraw your motion to?
Did I do a motion table?
Yeah, I'm going to withdraw
Made a
my
motion to table.
money, yeah.
Okay, so the
That's
motion's
all.
withdrawn. Is the new motion then?
There wasn't a
There was no
motion,
motion
there
to
wasn't a
table.
motion to table.
I don't think I did.
No.
I think I told you
All we
before I was
did
going to,
was-
but I didn't do
Somebody
it.
other made a motion. to
Yeah.
table. All right, I'm sorry.
Okay.
All we did
So-
was make a motion and second to go into discussion about it. But
So, well, there's the order here. There was a motion and a second to do this, but
So we're,
to pay $250 with $62,500 being paid now.
Did you make the second
and
to do that? Who did the second?
That was
you made the
Judge
motion to amend? No, he made the motion to
Parsons'
amend.
motion, right?
You second.
yeah, he moved and I seconded it. So
Okay, the motion would be to amend to say it is ordered to pay Greater Paducah Economic Development
To amend, you seconded.
$250,000.
Made a motion, he said.
Or
Right, okay, okay.
$62,500 being the first quarter budget allocation. That's all we do is pay
that's
like a normal motion. Yeah.
That's right. So we're going to strike the words to enter into a service agreement.
Right.
And rather, we're just going to leave the words as authorized to pay the amount of $250. And, I'm sorry.
Don't authorize to pay the whole year.
Oh, yes,
Just
that's right.
Authorize just to pay the first quarter and leave the business of $250 out of this order, please. That might be clearer for the clerk and everyone.
All right, so to pay the amount of $62,500.
Yep.
So it is ordered that the judge executive is authorized to pay the amount of $62,500 being the first quarter budget allocation for fiscal year 2019-20 to GPED.
Right,
Okay.
right. Good work.
Do we need the judge
Whose motion is
executive
that?
I'll make that my motion.
I second that. We need to vote
Write
on
a
it.
check out of your account.
You got one?
I'll make the motion. Did you
He got it, I second.
To amend it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Yes.
right. Any more
Motion
discussion?
and second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? All right, that finally carries.
Well, that approves the amended. Now we have to approve the motion.
I move now we approve the amended order that allows the payment of the $62,500, but gives us time to work out the contract.
I second that.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? All right, that carries. All right, now we went from A to D here,
Yeah,
didn't we?
B to D, we missed C.
Let's do, well, the next one.
Okay. It is ordered that $52,188.12 from the transient room tax escrow fund be transferred to the city of Paducah for bond payment on the Convention Center Series 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? That carries.
It is ordered that the court order of June 24th, 2019 regarding a temporary change in the salary structure of Jason Logsdon, Deputy Coroner, is amended to reflect an additional 48 hours worked in June. An additional amount of salary of $395.84 is due to be paid and will be added to a future payroll.
So made.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? Carries.
It is ordered that a bid opening was held at 2 p.m. on July 18, 2019 at the McCracken County Sheriff's Office for the purchase of 3 2019 Dodge Durango Pursuit all-wheel drive vehicles. One bid was received, that bid from Linwood, and was taken under advisement.
So made.
Second.
Discussion? Let's see. Matt, I was thinking you were going to not do the, does pursuit mean it's the big engine?
No, sir, it's V6.
The 3.6?
It's a V6.
V6.
Yeah. Pursuit just means, well, anyway, I'd heard that the big engine wasn't holding up like the little engine. So, all right, any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries.
It is ordered that the bid for the purchase of 3 2019 Dodge Durango Pursuit all-wheel drive vehicles be awarded to Linwood at the
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
at the bid amount of $28,710, which is lower than the state contract amount of $28,963.
So made.
Excuse
Second.
me, before you vote on that, I think we want to actually order 4 because we have an insurance settlement on one that was recently unfortunately wrecked. The bid was, we asked for bids for 3, but we got unit pricing on them. They didn't vary, so we really need 4 at this point, given that we have an insurance settlement on a rather new car.
So we need to go back and amend F.
F, can we just do G?
No, just
Oh.
just G.
Just
G,
And
okay.
that should say $28,710 each, right?
28,710.
$28,000.
Right. That would be an each.
I do like the comparison to the bid amount and the state contract amount. That's helpful. Thank you.
I move we amend to include 28,710 each.
And you're going to amend it to from 3 to 4?
That right?
And from 3 to 4.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll second that amendment.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, that carries.
Now we need to vote on that amendment.
Yeah. Hold on. So, all in favor of the amendment of 4 and at 28,710 each.
Each.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
Aye, yeah. We're in favor.
Carries. All right. Let's see.
And we voted on both the amendment and the order.
I think, did we?
I've got a motion and a second on the order, but y'all have not voted.
Okay, we voted on the amendment.
Right,
And now we need to vote on the order.
right.
So now we're going to vote on the amended.
As amended.
I thought we just did.
Well, we were.
I thought you just voted on the amendment.
Okay.
Oh, we did 2 votes, didn't we?
Yeah, it wasn't clear. Let's just do it again. We vote on the order as amended.
All right, let's see
Aye.
how difficult can we make it. So, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Whatever, opposed, no. All right, that carries.
Now we're over there.
All right, let's see, we've got an ordinance.
So am I doing the ordinance next, or am I reading those board appointments that we want off the consent agenda, or does it
Oh,
matter?
that's right. Yeah, we've got the H and I, we've got these 2 board appointments that were on the consent agenda is AA and BB. And Mr. Jones, you asked that they be taken off the consent agenda and put on the regular.
I did.
And so we've got, well, if you'll, Madam Clerk, if you just read the
board
let's see,
appointments?
AA, yes.
It is ordered to reappoint Tom Schulte to the Carson Park Board with an effective date of July 31st, 2019, and an expiration date of July 31st, 2022, subject to further orders of the court.
So I guess we need a motion and a second to discuss.
Yep. So made.
I'll second.
All right, discussion.
Yeah, I guess I ask it to be taken off the consent agenda. Carson Park is a park that I think we're all looking at as ways to use it for more purposes, for more of us. And I would like the opportunity to interview both of these folks in advance of approving them for the board, since we're kind of, I think we're at least eyeballing or eyebrowing or looking at, raising our eyebrows at how we can maybe use Carson Park differently. And I'd just like to know their attitude toward that philosophy before we put them on board.
Can I ask a question of Mr. Doolittle? Can you explain to us the authority and power of this board, if you know? I mean, what authority do they have? Do they decide what can be there and can't be there? And do you know?
I don't know the answer.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, technically, it's titled in the name of in the county, so I think we are the controlling board of the property. But it would be handy to be in a situation where we could cooperate with the Carson.
I know that they have a, well, I don't remember, is it this week, do you know, Steve, that they have a board meeting scheduled, and I don't know even how many, is it next week? It's before our next meeting they have.
I think it's the 5th. They usually meet the first week of the month.
And so they're short too. I don't.
Well, do those board members serve until someone else is appointed?
I don't think that's clear in this case either.
I don't know, I mean, it sounds like we're not sure what they do. And so therefore we're not sure what they're going to do on August 5th and whether they're going to be missing the 2 members.
We're sure that what they do is they assist the county and namely the staff with operational issues at the park, including rental policies and event policies and general improvements that take place to the existing plant. And they're used as a citizen sounding board for those critical and important decisions that occur out there. I'm not sure they've been involved in sort of the broader issue of policy with regard to the use of the land, but more of the operational issue.
Well, there you want. You want a motion?
So so I move the table, and I'm going to
We have one more.
Yeah, I've got one more.
Oh, there's one more person there. We didn't talk about the other one. Okay.
It is ordered to appoint Beatrice Phillips to the Carson Park Board with an effective date of July 31st, 2019, and an expiration date of July 31st, 2022, subject to further orders of the court.
So made.
second. Second. And,
We'll table that one.
and I make the same motion to table.
All right. Any, is a second on tabling it?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor of tabling? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right. Table it.
Did you table it?
I
You tabled it?
move to
Okay.
table.
Can you second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we're at the ordinance.
Now we're at the ordinance. Okay. It is hereby ordered that pursuant to KRS Chapter 67, the first reading of ordinance number 2019-08 shall be conducted in summary format as follows. McCracken County, Kentucky, McCracken County Fiscal Court, ordinance number 2019-08. An ordinance amending the McCracken County zoning and subdivision regulations set forth in McCracken County ordinance number 2015-09, as amended by making revisions and amendments to the zoning regulations pertaining to permitted land uses in areas zoned as commercial, agricultural, and rural residential, and revisions and amendments to subdivision regulations related to plat approval, submission procedure, and county road specifications. The action effectuated in the present ordinance is authorized and required by Kentucky Revised Statutes, Chapter 100, and operates to amend the McCracken County zoning ordinance regulations by designating the following as permitted uses in the following zoned areas: automotive services and crematory services in agricultural districts, crematory services in rural residential districts, and banking and financial services in commercial districts. Further, the ordinance amends the McCracken County subdivision regulations as follows. Procedural changes are made to the plat approval submission process, and updates were made to the process for acquisition of information related to McCracken County road specifications. It is hereby certified by the McCracken County Fiscal Court that the present summary represents an accurate official statement of the main points of and contents of ordinance number 2019-08. Ordinance number 2019-08 shall be available for public inspection in its whole and complete form in the McCracken County Judge Executive's office during ordinary business hours.
Motion on that.
So made.
Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Well, what's this do? I know what it says, but what does it really do? Did this come as a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Board?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the first part on changes to permitted uses, you hate to be reactionary, but that's kind of what we've got going on here. Automotive services is not. That's something that's frequently gets requested out in the ag zones. You've got a lot of gentlemen working out there that they work on tractors, they work on farm vehicles, things like that. That's technically not permitted. This way, we've got a lot of it. If you drive around the county, you'll find it. This gives them the freedom to actually do that as a permitted use out in those areas. I see the advantage of allowing a guy to set up a shop to do tractor repair out there in an agricultural zone as opposed to having somebody have to tow a tractor into town, into a commercial district to get it worked on. So that's where that came from. The crematory services, where that came about is Wilbert Vault. After the tornado came through, their building was half destroyed. They wanted to rebuild, and they could have rebuilt right where they were, but they wanted to move up on the corner. That was actually going to require a zone change the way the ordinance is currently written. But from when the ordinance was originally written to the way crematory services are handled now, a lot of new information has come out. A lot of techniques have changed. Everybody gets this image of smoke coming out of the building, smell. None of these things are true. So Mr. Doolittle and I actually asked the question, why wouldn't you permit this? I will tell you that the previous fiscal court made an amendment to allow crematory services as a permitted use anywhere where you have a cemetery. In the county, we have several cemeteries in urbanizing residential zones. That's our highest density zone. And an operator can go in and build a crematory in those cemeteries and have that done in our highest density areas. That's a permitted use there. So we said, if you can do that, why couldn't you do it out into a rural area? So that's what brought that about. Like I said, you hate to be reactionary, but that's what happened here. In the commercial zones, we've got adding banking and financial services. Nowhere outside the city limits of Paducah is banking or financial activity allowed currently.
Yeah, we need to change that right now.
Yeah, that's everything had been grandfathered in. There's actually one out towards the Ballard County line that was approved as a similar use that got in. That's the only new one that's come in. But that banking is needed. So that's where that came from. We all were kind of shocked when we realized that wasn't there. Number 16 here on page 3 is talking about multifamily dwellings and that. That's going to limit the ability to put new large subdivisions into industrial zones. Industrial zones are very limited, and typically if you've got somebody coming in, they're needing large tracts of land, and and more often than not, it tends to be farmland out there in these areas.
Industrial, we've got heavy, medium, and light, right?
Well, we've got two. We've got heavy industry and light industry.
Okay.
Light industry, sound, noise, odor is confined onto the property. Heavy industry,
That's not in this ordinance, though, is it? In what we're doing tonight? I don't think that's in this one.
Yes.
Which is that? It's not mentioned in the summary anyway.
Well, it's on with Section 45 commercial. It limits the single-family dwellings in the commercial zone. You can have apartment buildings that the effect of it is through the stack zoning process that McCracken County has, is that it would limit the ability to do subdivisions out in the industrial zones. So it's limited in the commercial, but it's when you look at the ordinance as a whole, the ordinance for light industry and heavy industry says any permitted use in the commercial zone.
So is that the change in the procedural matter? Because that's not mentioned in this summary, what you just talked about. I mean, is it?
Yeah, if you look on page 3, that's listed as items.
We don't have all that, we just have the summary.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we do have it, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, so if they're on item 16.
Okay. I got you.
So this way you can still do apartment buildings, townhouses, heavier density items in commercial zones, but the major effect is when you get out into the industrial zones, no more large subdivisions where if you've got a developer coming in, they've got to try to buy up potentially 100, 200 tracts of land.
This would be either light industry or heavy industry.
Yes. Yeah. And most likely in those zones, you're not going to see the high density residential apartment buildings, townhouses, things like that. But you could see that in commercial. And most of the time in commercial zones, when we do see residential go in, you are seeing apartment buildings or townhomes, things like that.
So do we have we had that scenario where anyone wanted to put in residential in a light? When you're not saying adjacent to light industry, you're talking in the light industry, right?
The airport, new subdivision going in out there. Just west of the north end of the runway. Part of that's zoned light industry. Actually, that part was zoned commercial, but a brand new subdivision going in there. And there's going to be houses, they literally are going to look out their front windows onto the northern end of the runway. That presents a whole other host of issues potentially. You've got noise issues that, okay, we've approved this. Well, it was a use by right, so we didn't have a choice. But what happens in 10, 15 years, those homeowners come back and start complaining because we approved a subdivision and the noise from the planes are keeping them awake at all hours of the night. Other towns have gotten sued over things like that. But also, you've got a very finite amount of land that is really suitable for major development from an industrial standpoint. And
I certainly agree. Once it's zoned light industry, you want it to be used for light industry, but I guess I'm a little concerned about the guy that owns it that says, well, yesterday I could have built apartments on it, and today I can't. I think that's going to be the effect, right?
Yes. very much so. But I mean, you've got that essentially with any change you make.
Yeah, but the other changes we make, and we're letting,
you're
adding
going
to the list.
You're going to add
in this
to.
case, we're actually potentially devaluing somebody's property.
That's a possibility. Or on the flip side, you could say that you're adding value to it because now, if you've got an industry coming in, they've got the land available to look at, where if there was residential next to it, there could be some regulation at the state or federal level, depending on what the industry was, on how close they could locate to residential areas.
I guess in my mind, I want to see us get behind the planning and zoning board. So I think it needs to be done. Do you know of any active things out there that we could be affecting with this?
No.
Okay.
No, since we've started looking at this change, no one has approached me with any possible development saying that this is what we're looking at doing, this is where we're looking at doing it. Doesn't always mean that they come to me in a timely manner. I mean, one of their first steps should be to come to me and say, this is what we're thinking about. Sometimes they don't come to me until they're ready to file an application. So there could be something out there that I don't know about, but no one's approached me.
Any more discussion?
So this requires 2 readings?
Yes.
Obviously, every ordinance says, so I guess we'll have opportunity to, hopefully, if we were to pass this, we would hear back from the public who are not in favor of it in between the first and second.
Well,
you're not aware of anybody who would?
No, and before this come through, I alerted all of the engineering firms and told them to let all of their the local developers know. I mean, we can't get all the out-of-town developers because you never know who those are going to be. We know who the local developers are. And they were all told, this is what we're looking at. And several people raised the same issues that you did, but when it came time at the meeting, they either didn't stand up and say anything or didn't show up at all. And I'd been warning them for at least a good month ahead of time that if you've got an issue, you need to speak up.
Well, so the planning board voted to approve this?
Yes, any changes under KRS 100, any changes to the zoning ordinance, it's supposed to start with the planning commission. They will approve something and then they will pass it on to the fiscal court with their recommendation to approve.
Was it unanimous?
Yes. Yeah. Now the subdivision regulation portion of it, that does not have to go through the planning commission. That can just go through the fiscal court. The planning commission in that case is simply recommending that you all take it, but they don't have to take anything up with the subdivision regulations.
Can I change gears just a little bit and ask about the automotive services?
Yeah.
Would this permit a salvage yard?
No.
And how do we know that?
Because the salvage yard, under its classification in our zoning ordinance, is required in an industrial zone.
I guess.
I think it's allowed in the light industrial zone. I'd have to have the ordinance in front of me, but salvage yards are required to be in industrial zones.
I guess I'm concerned about how many cars can you be working on at one time before it becomes a salvage yard?
We have addressed that issue previously in other zones. Danny Walker, our code enforcement officer, he deals with those. A lot of times it's not completely subjective, but I know he's told me when he goes out there, one of the things he checks are all the cars properly licensed. sometimes you'll have a car that has a recently expired license that he waiting to put an engine in. We've had that come up before. But as long as the cars are all current on their licensing, then it's not been deemed a salvage yard. But Danny does keep up on that, and if there's ever a question or it gets to be excessive, trust us, we will receive a call.
Okay. All right. I yield. I'm wearing them out.
When we publish this notice on the first reading, is this summary what's published in the paper? Or do you do the whole, is there a?
That part I don't know. I don't have a role in that.
I think that's correct, Elon. It looks like.
I guess I'm concerned the summary doesn't include the subdivision element that you talked about where it changes the residential subdivision. It's not in the summary. So if we publish this, that portion of it that you referred to on page 3 or 2, whatever it was, is not in the summary.
Okay.
I mean, it may not be an issue, I don't know.
Well, it's a zoning regulation pertaining to permitted land uses in areas zoned as commercial, agricultural, and rural residential, isn't it?
Yeah.
What you got some concern about those words not being in there?
No, I'm fine, but I mean, I just was concerned that that part that you explained is not, I don't see that in the summary. It talks about, the summary talks about the crematory services, the banking and things like that, but it didn't talk about the subdivisions.
You're talking about that part
Right.
where you can no longer build apartments if you have light industry.
Yeah, that is not in the summary.
I didn't pick it up from the summary, Greg, until you explained it.
I didn't either.
Well, I don't know, that's summary, but I don't know how much
It doesn't talk about the multifamily.
detail has to be in a summary. We got a problem with that language not being in the,
Greg didn't draft the summary, I drafted the summary, and I drafted it what I thought was necessary to apprise the public as to the main points of the statute or of the ordinance, so that they could in turn then look at the ordinance to clarify the specific points of the ordinance. So in my mind, it was not only, there was substantial compliance, and not direct compliance with chapter 67. So if we want to do it a little bit more specifically, we can, but it's always been my approach that the summary will just give the main points of what's being done, such as a change to the authorized use.
And I will add that your summary is even more thorough than what the summary that the Planning Commission publishes whenever they take up, because the only thing we publish is a notice of what sections that we will be discussing potential updates to. But the Planning Commission's actions are not final. Your actions are. So
I just don't want
that's
to get into a situation later on where somebody said, well, you published the summary, which is required by law, which we need to do away with, I agree with, but, and somebody can come back and say, well, I didn't know that was in there, so I didn't have a reason to go look into more detail. And I just don't want us to come in a problem later on with that.
I think it's okay because there's some older AG opinions that talk about that summary publication in 67, and it says that the legislative intent behind that is to bring the public's attention to the main points of the ordinance being enacted, and then if the public is interested in further knowledge or further investigation, they can then go to the judge executive's office and learn the specifics of what's being done.
You know, is there any emergent reason to do it tonight, to start it tonight? I mean, is there like some bank we're going to lose if we don't do this tonight?
We're not going to lose a bank, but Wilbert Vault is still operating out of a half-collapsed building.
So the crematory, they need...
Yeah, because they've been waiting on us to figure out what their next step was. And they're still, I mean, their building half collapsed after the tornado, and they're still operating out of it.
Are they ready to start construction? I mean, if we wait 2 weeks and kind of redo this, I'm just really concerned about the fact that I'm concerned about with this ordinance, suddenly you can't do something you could do, and making sure that everyone who owns the land like that knows, hey, we're about to not be able to do what we could do.
Well, and they've got 2 weeks to, I mean, well, I think that if we're gonna, we have the county attorney that drew the thing up, it's more expansive than the zoning board's summary to address those things. This is the first reading. If we need to, can we not, Sam, if we decided that we wanted more language in there added in the second one, or is this, will we have to do another first reading if we?
Again, my concern is that
if we modify this language, do we have to?
The summary is just going to reflect a summarization of the specific points of the statute. The specific points of the statute are the ones that can be, or the terms that can be amended in writing prior to the second reading. If we want to add additional details as to the generalities of the ordinance, then we can definitely do that. But they're going to be referring to the same specifics contained in the ordinance. And I would think anybody, I don't know.
I just want whatever we put in the paper to reflect that if you own light industry, you'll no longer be able to build an apartment complex on it. And if that's in the summary, then you're right. They'll have an opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to run up there and talk to them about that.
Not in the summary. Potentially the most controversial part of this is not included in the summary.
So can we amend the summary right now?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll publish it again and we'll just add some additional language in there. I'll even bold it.
Problem solved.
Yeah. Hell, I'll underline it.
What do you
That'd be good.
want to amend it?
I'll get with you tomorrow. We'll figure it out.
I guess what I'm saying, do we vote to amend the summary, or do you just
I'll
simply
do
say,
it.
Eddie, I'm going to do that, I'll take care of that for you?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that by adding permitted uses, we're actually bucking the trend nationally under zoning ordinances. Most of them they only get more restrictive. It's very rare anybody ever adds any permitted uses.
Well, I think that's smart. I mean, the more businesses we recruit to the county, the higher our tax base is. So.
We need to delay this 2 weeks just to make sure we get that in the summary.
So is that what you want? There's a
They were
motion.
amending it. I don't know.
Well, I got
When does it go on the paper, Sam?
It's been in once, and
Okay.
then I think the process is that it'll again be advertised at least 7 days prior to, but not more than 21 days prior.
Oh, I see. So,
And this would have the corrected amendment the next time it goes in. I'm okay with that. I mean, they read it. That's,
Well, the newspaper needs more money. We can run it 3 times instead of twice.
I don't want to do that. I want to get it amended and run it right. What do you think, Bill?
I think we ought to amend it before we do the first publication.
Okay.
Again, as Commissioner Jones points out, that's the one we might get the most feedback on, but it's not in the summary. And somebody might not know to come in and ask, are you, if it's not in there.
Bring it back in 2 weeks then.
I think that's the safest thing to do. I hate to delay it, but I don't know. If I own light industry property and you were going to take away my right to do something, I'd really want to know about it before.
Well, let's do it. How do you want to amend it? You want to table it?
I move that we table this until our August 5th meeting.
I second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm opposed. It passes. Carries.
You are?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'm back here looking at, Matt, did we get Johnson on here is that for executive? I didn't realize we're doing an executive session, but, okay, so that's the executive session. Do we have any resolutions we need to do? don't know if any, and we have one item apparently for executive session then. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So made.
Purpose is personnel.
Yeah.
Who seconded?
So the motion would be, let's see, where's the issues which might lead to the appointment, dismissal, appointment, dismissal or disciplining of an employee is permitted by KRS 61.810(1)F. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, we'll go into executive session. Let's see, and so there's a possibility when we come back out of executive session, there'll be a personnel matter, a change in personnel in the sheriff's department. That's about the extent of it. So we will, I think, take some action when we come back and decide if you want to stay or
So
not.
I have to stay. Oh.
Yep.
This is the Bachelorette, y'all.
You got a recording, don't you? Listen, keep your text. Thanks for asking.
No, I am recording it, so it's all right. You have to go to the bathroom.
Oh, me too.
All right. Well, we can take 5 minutes.